Hi, my name is Tunji Williams. I am the host of Black Founder Hour, and this week is actually our season finale. This is episode 10. I have the pleasure of getting to chat with Henri Pierre-Jacques. Henri is the founder and managing partner of Harlem Capital, a venture firm based in Harlem. He's raised two funds with his partners, Jared and Brandon. The first fund being a $40 million fund, and the second $134 million, all raised to invest in over 1,000 diverse founders over the course of the next 20 years. The fund looks to deploy more than $1 billion worth of capital to support these founders in growing global businesses. Henri and I talk about all kinds of things, including his path to creating a venture fund in his second year of school at Harvard Business School, as well as the challenges of growing in what is becoming a crowded market for venture capital. Henri's a really dynamic guy with a clear point of view and a massive vision for the future of venture capital and the growth of diverse founders across the world. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Henri Pierre-Jacques.
Hey, Henri, how's it going?
Good. How's it going?
It's going well. No complaints. Really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this. This is the first season of Black Founder Hour, and this is like the 10th episode, and you're our season finale. And I was kind of shocked when you got back to me because I know how busy you are. I know you were in the midst of raising this, this major second fund that you and your partners have raised. And I really appreciate it. What we're trying to do with Black Founder Hour is tell the stories of folks who I believe have a true gift and are going to build global companies that they're going to scale over the years, and want to tell their story on the front end so we can kind of reference back and say, look, they told us what they were going to do and they did it. It came to fruition. You've already advanced along your path in some ways. That you describe where you are with Harlem Capital, your venture capital firm, is kind of Series A stage in venture terms with respect to what you're trying to build more broadly. I don't think it's Series A in any regard. You've raised over $174 million total over two funds. Your mission at Harlem Capital is to invest in 1,000 plus diverse founders over 20 years. You're looking to allocate more than $1 billion worth of capital, and you're making serious headway. I just want to give you a chance to kind of tell us who you are and why you're here, what your purpose is.
You've done your research.
A little bit.
Yeah, I guess for a quick background on me, Henri Pierre-Jacques, originally from Detroit, Michigan, first generation Haitian American. My dad was born in Haiti. My mom was born in Detroit, which is why I grew up in Detroit. Moms kind of make those decisions. Was there for the first 18 years of my life, went to Chicago for school at Northwestern. My passion for finance started pretty early in middle school. My mom had me playing a game called Cash Flow. And then I started trading stocks in middle school and then buying real estate properties in college. Once I got to college, got into a bunch of finance programs through programs like SEO, MLT, Lee, which are diversity-focused programs, which I highly recommend to diverse people who want to get into industry. So I had internships at Goldman, B of A, and MetLife while I was in college. Ended up going to B of A after school to do investment banking for 2 years in a real estate and gaming group. Even though I own real estate properties, I don't like real estate finance. I think it's quite boring personally, like valuing the asset versus the actual business underneath the asset. And so pretty quickly realized that, started recruiting for generalist private equity. And then ended up at ICV Partners, which is a Black-owned private equity firm based in New York, middle market shop, typically buying companies 10 to 30 million in EBITDA, which is basically profits. Did that for 2 years, really got inspired, started Harlem Capital while I was at ICV. So Jared, who's one of my partners, was my cubemate at ICV, and then Brandon, one of our other partners, was my roommate in banking, and he worked with me in banking too. And so all of us met during MLT 2010, so 11 years ago. We've been best friends. We all lived in Harlem. We've been roommates and worked together. And so we started investing. We created Harlem Capital as an angel syndicate. Did that for 2.5 years, invested, $250,000 of our own personal capital between the three of us plus three of our friends. Jerry and I started at Harvard Business School. We were roommates there. Started recruiting for other internships, and after working at a Black-owned firm, didn't really want to work for a firm with no Black partners. I mean, didn't need to be all Black, but like at least have one Black partner. which was most funds. And so decided, like, why don't we just raise our own fund, not fully knowing what that meant. And between our first and second year of business school, we launched Fund 1. Target was 25 million. We raised 12.5 when we were in business school, and then 28 once we graduated. Closed the Fund 1 of 40 November of 19, with the goal to invest in 28 companies. We've done 26 so far, so we have 2 more deals there. And then we launched Fund 2 October of 2020. The goal was to launch it in 2021, but after George Floyd and a number of other things, it was pretty clear diversity was a hot topic, and so momentum was there. And so we launched early and closed Fund 2 in March of 2021. Target was 100, closed at 134. Similar mission, but we want to invest in 45 companies versus 28, and in bigger checks, $1 to $2 million checks, more ownership. So we'll start deploying Fund 2 sometime in July. And that'll be another 2 to 3 year fund term.
Wow. Talk about execution. That's fantastic.
It seems linear. There's a lot of in-betweens.
I know. But even with that, it's a charmed path. I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. Your resume, even before you got into your, building your own venture, your resume kind of reads like a Nigerian mother's dream. Northwestern, Harvard Business School, Goldman Sachs, you name it, it's on there. But you had to have had a model for achievement. You went to Detroit Country Day, which I know is one of the more prestigious schools in the country. I grew up in Southeast Michigan, actually, myself. Nice. In Ann Arbor, so really familiar with DCD. You've been striving for excellence, it seems, for a long time. You must have models. I'm curious about growing up, what the standards were for you and who you looked to as you
your Nigerian mom was my Black mom and my Haitian dad. So I definitely credit my mom with Country Day. I didn't, as a middle schooler, had no idea like what a prominent high school really meant. A big reason my mom wanted to, so my parents got divorced when I was in 7th grade. So like that was kind of like this inflection point. And I switched schools in 8th grade where my parents, we split houses. And so my mom decided to put me in Country Day. Part of it was I was the only Black student from 1st to 7th grade. I went to a Baptist school in the suburbs of Detroit. And like middle school was really when like racism started happening. People start poking your afro. People like make references to Detroit, and like I didn't live there, but I had family there. I got called the N-word for the first time in 5th grade. So it just became more of a thing. Like I didn't really notice it because like until then, and started getting more trouble. My mom just like realized I need to be around more people of color. And Country Day, it was still a private school, but a lot more diverse. It's like 20% Black, and has top sports school plus like really smart people. So it was a good ethnicity diversity. So I credit my mom with that. And Country Day was a big moment for me. One, because it was an inflection point in terms of like finding confidence in myself as an African American. There's a lot of people there who are extremely smart and extremely athletic. And so I think just like really feeling confident, like who I am as a person. And before that, I felt like I had to assimilate as the only one, literally like of 1,000 students. Like my school was Plymouth Christian Academy was 1st grade to 12th grade. And there were maybe 3 Black students from all 12 years. And so that was a really big inflection point for me, just like feeling who I am. And then also realizing like, I was smart, but like there was much smarter people than me. I was good at basketball. Like Country is a, top ranked school in the country, but like there are people, like 2 of my teammates play in the NBA. 2 of them play abroad in Europe. So like, just no matter like how good you think you are, there are always people who are better than you. I think Country was like very humbling. And it's why a lot of students do well in college, because you go and realize like, okay, like I'm good, but like now I'm taking a bunch of Country Days and they're all going to Northwestern or they're all going to Harvard Business School. And so I think like that humility was really helpful. And I was just like, you had to just work really hard. Like, and even if you worked as hard as you could, you'll never be LeBron. You'll never be like this, the smart kid in the room. And so I think that was just like a great experience for me and really set me up for success going forward. And then really after that, like it was finding minorities who I wanted to emulate. And a big part of that was doing diverse programs. And so the reason I went to Northwestern, I did a program in high school called LEAD, which is a 4-week program at like 10 schools, Wharton, Northwestern, et cetera. And you do a business plan for 4 weeks, and they fly 30 students of color in from all across the country. And that program was at Northwestern. I was there for a month in the summer, so I didn't realize how bad the winters were. But like a lot of my coaches are Northwestern students. And so once I actually went to Northwestern, my coaches were seniors and I was a freshman, and like a lot of them were my mentors, and like they told me about SEO and MLT and all these programs to do and these pipelines, and that really like just helped create my path, and was a big factor in just seeing more people of color in spaces I wanted to do. There's few of us, but like I feel like I knew a lot of them. That just like helps like make you feel like it's possible. And so I think those programs and my coaches through Lee like were a big reason that I had the belief in myself that like, okay, like this is possible.
You talk about, and you've spoken about it before. I was watching your interview with Jason Calacanis. I always watch This Week in Startups, and it's a dream of mine to be on there one day. And seeing you on there on March 19th, seeing you on there was just like, wow, this is possible. I really do feel like I'm looking at myself, and I mean that in the realest of ways. So it's no small thing to have you and Jared out there doing what you're doing, and Brandon. It's so important to be out there and to be visible. And I have a sense, I think, for the gravity of it, but can only imagine from your perspective. But you're doing a fantastic job. You talk about Willie Woods at ICV as being, one of your important mentors. I saw a tweet the other day talking about inflection points, and you mentioned him and your relationship with him being an inflection point. Can you tell us a little bit more about that relationship and just mentors like him in your life generally?
Yeah, so I didn't know Black-owned PE firms existed until I did the SEO private equity program, started recruiting. And so, I started recruiting. Everybody wants to go to the big names, the KKR, TVGs of the world. And SEO was like, hey, there's this firm ICV. We think you'd be interested. I was like, okay, fine, I'll take a shot. I went in, started doing my research. I have one of my mom's friends knew Willie, went to Morehouse with him. So I started doing references, had the interviews, and just like felt, they went from the bottom of my resume to the top. So like this complete opposite strategy. It was like not just case study driven. I did a case study, but it was more about like you as a person, and the firm clearly like cared a lot about culture. So like that stood out to me, and I ended up getting an offer and deciding to go. Another thing that stood out to me was a lot of them went to Harvard Business School. So there's 6 partners, 5 of the 6 partners went to Harvard Business School. That was always a dream of mine to go to HBS. Both my parents went to Harvard Med. And so I wanted to go to Harvard Business School. And so I knew like having people of color in particular who had gone to HBS would just be super advantageous to me, and was a big, I took my GMAT in college. So like going to business school had always been in my roadmap. So that was another reason as well. And so, yeah, I got there, and, Willie graduated HBS, I think, in 96 or 93. He started ICV in 1999. So he's been building the firm for over 20 years. One of the few people of color who manages $1 billion plus of AUM. I think they're at $1.3 billion right now. And so that was just super inspiring and empowering. And I think another thing was when we started Harlem Capital, as an investor, you have to get all your investments conflict approved. And so like they knew Harlem Capital existed. They knew Jerry and I were working on it. They could see, we started like getting press, and we were doing LinkedIn posts and stuff like that. But, like they approved it, and they supported us because it was a 2-year program. Either it was like you stay, you go to business school, you go to another PE firm. But it was very clear, like, this is a 2-year program, do your work, but like we know there's other things that you have to do in your life. And so I think that support of like allowing us to actually start Harlem Capital, invest, build our brand, like people, once we got to business school, we already had 2 years of investing in 2 years of a brand, which basically is what set us up to raise the fund in school. Like otherwise we would have been starting during business school, not have a track record, not have a brand. And so it was really critical. Like, he was a huge supporter. He was our first big check. He was our first board of advisor, and never, had this mentality of like, I need you to stay. I think I was talking to somebody recently about what they call Tiger Cubs, which is all the people who left Tiger and started funds. Like super, it's like, hey, I know you're going to leave. Like, I want to support you. And hopefully, you send me deals later or whatever it may be. One of our interns actually is an associate at ICB now. Right. And so it's just like this small world, and this belief of like just setting up really smart people for success, and not having this mentality of I need to keep you here. And if you leave, like you're an enemy, or like I'm not going to help you. And Willie just never had that mentality. And he, there's a number of ICB alums who've gone on to start incredible companies or funds who Willie has supported financially or qualitatively. I think that's what we're going to do. And I think Tiger Cub, Willie Wood ICB model is just smart. And you just want to back smart people. And, if they're successful, like you'll be successful. And obviously we reference ICB pretty often in our interviews and stuff. And so it just builds your brand, right? It creates more of a wider brand of excellence versus this like my firm mentality that I think a lot of funds have, and they kind of view people who leave, as like your time is done.
I think Willie's relationship with you is an example of, I think, the profits possible when you kind of adopt an abundance mindset with respect to mentorship and building out an organization and just a network. It inures to all of our benefit to be tapped into that and to help continue to build it out. One of my favorite mentors has hammered into my head that kind of at every stage of life, you should have someone you're looking to ahead of you to kind of show you the way, folks you're traveling with along the way, peers that can keep you, focused and encourage you, and then folks you're reaching back to help and help guide. You've been on a journey with Brandon and Jared for 11 years. You guys are in partnership building out Harlem Capital, and hopefully for many decades you'll be doing it. Can you tell me a little bit about the glue in those relationships? What's the defining characteristic that makes, or set of characteristics that make it work?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. People always say you don't want to get into business with like your friends or family, and Brandon and Jared are basically both at this point. I was in Jared's wedding. Brandon and Jared were both in my wedding. We've lived together, and you learn a lot when you live with guys in their early 20s. Like, I know everything about them. So yeah, I think there's just it was this natural progression of, we were friends. We all worked in finance. We were making, good money early in our lives, and we all valued like investing, right? And so it was just, we didn't start out like wanting to raise a fund. We didn't start out wanting to, be diversity focused. Like we were investing in white people. We were investing in coffee shops and real estate properties. Like, we just liked investing. And I think that it just became very clear. Okay, we're all Black men. We all live in Harlem. We all we value investing. Like, we were very serious. Like, we were meeting every other week. We were taking it. We literally look at our agenda notes from 5 years ago. Like, before we were a fund, we were taking notes and keeping people responsible and doing voting process. And so I just this shared, the shared mindset of investing in your future and investing in your community really is what stuck us all together. And so that's kind of continued. And as time has evolved, we've gotten more and more serious, and obviously now an institutional fund. And so that's, we continue to develop it, but you also have to be focused on your relationship, and we try to make sure we remain friends. We do outings, what we call fellowship. And so, it's not just business, like what I consider work hard, play harder. And that's a key part of why we've remained such good business partners. We just have a good time. And it's very much a work hard, play harder mentality. Like you just can't take yourself too seriously, but at the same time, we obviously do take our job seriously, but we continue just to value each other as humans, and know that, that's really important. And ultimately, our brotherhood is more valuable than, our LP or GP partnership. And so that's just something that stays true to us, and is always in our mind, how can we continue to evolve and, and involve, Jared's married with a kid, I'm married, Brandon's in a serious relationship, all of our significant others, connect together, etc. That's just really important. And so we continue to focus on that versus this. And this is something that ICB did really well too. ICB would do these outings where all of people's significant others and kids would come, and we typically would do it at one of the partners' houses, and there'd be a playscape for the kids, and there'd be drinks for the adults, and we just have a good time. I think that's something that we've learned. And at Bank of America or other firms, was much more a work outing, and it was kind of just whoever was in your group, but nobody was ever bringing their partners or kids to these things. It was kind of like a happy hour at 5 p.m. on a Friday just for your group, versus involving your entire life, which I think is just what we, you have to when you're an entrepreneur. There's no work-life balance. Work is life and life is work. It's if you're not intertwining them, there's not going to be any capacity or space for you to really have the time. And so I bring my wife to a bunch of our events, and same thing for the other guys. We're always just trying to find ways to merge our lives and make it more sustainable, because it's a grind.
Indeed. And you started early. You and Jared started this your second year at HBS at Harvard Business School. In fact, I just had Devin Hurd on, an entrepreneur, CEO, co-founder of Prediction Strike, which is a stock market for professional athletes. just finished his first year at Harvard Law School, raised $1 million there. You guys bested him and raised $12 million during your second year in business school. Can you talk to me about that? It takes guts, I think, at any stage to decide you're going to put your name out there and you try to build a brand and convince founders that your capital is worth their time. You did that coming out of school. What allowed you to be that divergent and bold in your thinking at that stage and to take action to go ahead and start building Harlem Capital?
I mean, I think part of it was I didn't see it as a risk, honestly. Part of it was, what other option do I have, right? Like if I want to work for people of color and I go and I scrape all these websites, like it's pretty clear I don't really have that many options. And particularly 3 years ago, a lot of the funds of color, whether it's 645 or Charleston's a precursor, they were small, right? Like precursor was 15, 645 was just raising their second fund. Like there weren't really many options. And so it kind of was like either I'm going to go work for a non-diverse fund or I'm going to create my own fund. And then from a risk perspective, you know, if the summer didn't work out or things didn't work out, like I graduated Harvard Business School, I think I'll be fine. So I didn't like really see a lot of risk to it personally. Like obviously the risk was if you didn't raise as much as you needed, you would be poor. That was like my biggest concern. But honestly, my biggest fear at HBS was walking across the stage with a job. Like that was my biggest fear. I just knew for a fact I did not want to go work for another fund. Like a lot of smart people, but at some point, like it just comes repetitive. Like you're doing the same thing over and over because you're just a deal maker. Like your job is to review decks and to run the model. And like it's not, I don't know. For me, it was like, how could you do this for 10 to 15 years? How do you really get that much better at doing this? Like it just didn't really make sense to me. Like I got it. Like no disrespect to Willie or anybody else who at the top, or even me now that I'm now on top. Like as a junior person, you just get to a point where there's not really much more to learn. Right. And so either like you become the boss or you move on. And that's what people do. Right. It's because you just get bored of doing the same thing over and over. And that happened for me pretty early on. I just couldn't see myself doing the same. Like, okay, now I'm a principal, but like I'm doing the same thing basically. I'm just making more money with a higher title. So I didn't see a ton of risk in it. And that was one of my biggest fears, going to work as a principal in another fund. Just didn't appeal to me. And then, part of it was like being naive. Like there's beauty to like not knowing what you don't know. Like I didn't fully know like what running a fund meant or how hard it was to raise a fund or all the like intricacies of a fund and all that stuff. But like, there's beauty to it. And then part of it is like, you do have to have confidence. Like any founder has to believe in themselves more than other people believe in them. Right. It's like, I'm confident. Like everybody knows it. It's a strength, it's a weakness for me, but like, it's what's really gotten me to where I am. I think one of the things I always tell people is like, you have to have confidence of thought. Like you have to believe that like you think better than like the average person. Otherwise, why are you doing this? Like if you don't, but like, I think part of it is like this balance of, people always, especially for people of color, like it's always like my mom's always like, be humble, or she wants to introduce me to somebody. I'm like, Mom, like, I don't want this introduction. And she's like, you're too cocky. I'm like, no, I'm value of my time. I value my time extremely. And like, I make those decisions and determine it. But like, if you don't believe like you're like smarter than other people in whatever field you're in, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's kind of implied as a founder that you're cocky to some extent because you have to have this belief that you know something that nobody else knows. Like that just implies like egotism, cockiness. Like otherwise somebody else would have done it or somebody else would do it better than you. Right. I think people like are afraid to say it because it makes them seem, overconfident or cocky, but like it's an implication. And like, I fundamentally just like, I own that. And I know as a person of color, I know as a young person, like there are going to be like youngism, ageism against me. There's going to be racism against me, all these things. And like, I don't really care. Like I just fundamentally believe in myself. I believe in the people I've surrounded myself with. And I know we're going to be successful, whether or not it's through Harlem Capital or something else. Like I have no doubt we'll be successful. It's just a matter of like what platform we're using to get there. I think that's just like really powerful. And a lot of people just don't have that level of confidence and thought. And especially people of color, like we're always trained to like, like be thankful and grateful that we're at the table and all these things. I'm just like, that's just not my mentality. And whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. I don't really care. It's just more about like, that's just like how I view the world. And I think, and I balance it. Like Jared is not that way. And so I think having partners who balance that definitely helps because Jared's definitely more conservative than me. Like I'm much more liberal and like I'm a risk taker. And so I think having that balance like does help, but I think there has to be like diversity of thought. I think some people, need that confidence and some people don't.
It's interesting. You talk about confidence, and I think that's like the confidence game is a one-player game that I think founders and leaders play with themselves internally. And then there's also, you know, the multiplayer game that you turn and play with the world after you've, you know, incrementally figure out the one-player game. At least that's how I manage it.
Yep.
And I'm curious for you, when you're in your one-player game, to allow my crude analogy, what do you do to work on your internal confidence? Is it something that's just intrinsic? Is it because you put in the hours and you're confident in your technical ability? So you're ready to go on stage at any point? Or is there something you have to do to build yourself up because of some of the headwinds we face, you know, because of who we are? How do you maintain equilibrium internally?
I think it's repetition, and I think it's wins. So repetition is if you do something long enough, and definitely for investing, I've done 10,000 hours plus, like you review enough decks, you do enough models, you talk to enough people, you fundraise for 2 funds, like there's not many questions or things you haven't seen. So, you know, I definitely have confidence from repetition. And I think investing generally is a volume game. Like you don't know a 1 in 1,000 deal until you've seen 1,000 deals. So I do think repetition is really important in the investing game. And then from a winning perspective, like one of our internal comments or quotes is winners win. Like winners just keep winning. And like there's a cycle, and there's a reason why you see these top funds continue to get great deals. Like, they're not like better pickers, they're not better. Like it's just like once you get into a cycle, you happen to have that one big exit, and like now you had that founder who does a reference for you. It cycles on each other, right? And so there's just like this huge cycle effect, and VCs love showing the cycle in their fundraising decks of like, hey, like we creating this flywheel effect, as they call it. Like it's true, like winners win. And so as you get more wins, like you begin to get more confidence, like hey, like I can do this, I can win. And so, you know, as I think about like my story and you go through life, like whether it's like Country Day, I'm not like the best there, but okay, I can compete. Then you go to Northwestern, like, okay, I can compete at an even higher level. Then you go to banking, which is all the top people. I was the only Black person in my group of 45. Like I competed, it wasn't the best, but I competed. Private equity, same thing. Then HBS. And so it's like you get into enough rooms where like maybe you're not the best, but you can still win and like you can compete. And you just begin to realize like, okay, like I did it at Harvard, I did it at Northwestern, I did it at ICB, I did it at B of A. Like I can compete, like period. Like it doesn't matter what room I'm in, I can compete. And so if you do that enough times, and now it's Harlem Capital, like you just begin to have enough confidence where it's like, you know, yeah, maybe I'm not the most qualified. Like Harvard Business School, I had a 3.3 GPA, I had a 660 GMAT. The average for Harvard Business School is 3.7 and a 720. Like, so I, and I walked in like not like the most qualified, but I competed. I got honors. Jared got Baker Scholar. Like we competed, right? And we raised a fund while we were there. And so it's like, I need to get to a point where you realize like, stop questioning yourself. Like I'm just going to go in and like, you know, I haven't, you know, failed yet to some extent. And so we'll see what happens. And if I do fail, or if I don't, you know, reach the goal that I want, like it doesn't really matter. Like for me, I'd rather set my goal really high. So whether it's raise $1 billion by 2030 or invest in 1,000 founders, like if we raise 900 million, or if we invest in 500 founders versus 1,000, like I don't really do that as a failure. Like I'm not afraid to set public metrics to have people hold me accountable. I think some people are the opposite. Like some people want to kind of surpass what they set their goals are. And, you know, they would say, hey, I want to invest in 100 founders in 10 years. And that's admirable. And if you beat that, then like people kind of congratulate you. I guess I just care less about people congratulating me about like reaching the goals. It's more about how do I push myself to stretch, and how do I use my ecosystem and platform to hold us accountable. And I'd rather like shoot for it big. And if I miss, like, you know, I didn't get to the moon, but I got to the stars, right? Like that's just like more of a mentality I have. I think, and the more rooms you get into, the more times you win and compete, the more inner confidence you have to know that like, okay, like I may not be the best qualified, but I know I can like get this done.
Yeah, you know, your philosophy is no doubt on display, and you're performing. And I think that you had a 3.3 at HBS, or you were considered one of traditionally the best in the room in your banking jobs, I think says more about the standards in those worlds than it says about, you know, one's ability.
That's a whole nother conversation.
It's a whole, exactly. My goodness, we need another 40. I do have a question about your thesis at Harlem Capital and kind of the performance to date in relation to that thesis. Your thesis, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's latent value to be unlocked. among minority and diverse founders who generally get overlooked. There's alpha to be captured there because the general market doesn't see the value, and talent is distributed evenly across demographics. So why not go get it? How have you guys been doing so far? Is the thesis bearing out? What's the outlook?
Yeah, and I mean, we're performing well. This year is a big year for us. We've got the last month we've had 4 companies, 2 raise a Series A, 2 raise a Series B. So companies are performing just fine. And, the thesis isn't that, I don't like to say like people, they will outperform, right? Because I don't think the expectation should be that Black and Latino and women should have to do better than white men to get funding. And so the thesis is that they will perform in the top decile. Like they don't need to be top 1% for me to fund them. And so, our belief is just that like these people are underlooked, and we think they can perform just as good as anybody else who's in the top decile of founders, right? And only 5% of companies really matter for fund returns. And so like that's just our general belief. And obviously more people have that belief now, and there's a ton of diversity focused funds. But like there's so little space. I remember when we started Fund 1, people would say, "Oh, how are you different from Backstage Capital?" I'm like, well, one, they're in West Coast, we're on East Coast, like, so we can't have 2 Black funds in the entire country, right? It's always just like there can only be one in the room, and now there's more funds. So Fund 2, people had the same question, like, okay, all these new funds, like, how are you competing? And it's like there's literally 1,000+ white male funds who like have the same soft SaaS investing thesis. Like, I doubt you're asking this question. So I think part of that is probably frustrating, and it's like, well, our thesis was 70% of the U.S. population is Black, Latino, or women. That's going to grow to 80% by 2040. And, if there's 30, 40, 50, 100 diverse focused funds, it's still not going to really matter because it's 80% of the population. And then, my long-term goal is to be a multi-asset global fund. So you start going globally. I mean, people of color by far outnumber. So like, there's really no end in my view, and like no level of like amount of funds that can create a competition where I like start to worry that there's not enough talent out there. So I think we're super early days. I think it's a new asset class. I'm glad that Jewel Burke just announced her $50 million fund this morning with Collab Capital. I know she's been raising for 18 months. I'm glad they raised that. I think more funds like her need to exist. And, we just don't really view it as a competition. It's more about like, similar to the competitive thought, like my personal belief as a fund manager who thought like it didn't exist, like if we do what we're supposed to do, we will be successful. And I hope that other people who are in this industry will be successful as well, who are focused on this. But like, I'm not competing against them. It's not about one Black fund. It can only win that Black founder's deal. Like if we lose, fine, so be it. Like we got to get better. I think competition just brews more efficiencies in the market, right? The market has become more efficient in venture capital because more funds exist. The same will be true for diverse founders. They're not going to have to go to the 5 funds of color that exist, right? And if all 5 of us turn them down, it used to be like, well, if my people don't believe in me, like no one else will, and you kind of get down on yourself. Like that doesn't have to be the case anymore because there's more of us and there's more traditional funds who are also taking a look. And so like, I love the competition. Like I want to compete, and, I've been in enough rooms, as I mentioned, where I know I can compete. And so I think it's just like, let's have more people in this industry. Let's continue to get better. Let's continue to challenge each other. And that will just make diverse founders better positioned versus, LPs asking the question like, oh, more diverse funds, like what, and I get it, right? You're trying to figure out how do you win the best deals, what's the deal flow, but it's just not the way I view the world. I don't view it as other diverse funds like are taking opportunities from us. That there's just so much opportunity, and we're so early, and there's so much more to do. And I think from like a performance perspective, like our companies are performing. I mean, we tripled the size of our first fund. I think that kind of says enough for the LP base. Like companies are performing, and like we're just getting started. Like our best winners are like happening this year after we raise the fund. But like we feel very confident that a lot of our companies are going to perform really well, and it's exciting to see. And I'm excited to have more. Last week there were 2 Black founders who hit unicorn. One who sold his company for $1.3 billion, and one who hit unicorn status through a Series C. And like that's just happening at a volume we've never seen before. Like where you could see a unicorn of color like once a week or once a month. Like it's just the pace. The pace is changing dramatically now, and it's super exciting. I think it's inspiring because when we were first raising the fund, this is the data we were looking for. Like, everybody's okay, cool, like they're underserved, but can they create unicorn companies? And like there was just no data to point to. You had Compass, Cadre was like a couple $100 million, and then you had Julia Collins of Zoom Pizza. Like that was it. Like now, our recent report, we had 14 unicorns. Now with this, 16 unicorns that we've tracked that are Black or Latino, like that continues to grow. And I think that's just like really valuable because now we don't need to like prove the market. Like that fund one was like, how do we prove the market? Fund two was like, how do we prove our founders are performing? And then fund three will hopefully just be a track record, basically like on a page. Right? That's kind of the ultimate goal for fund three. But like, there's no more like proving the market that it exists, and more founders are getting to that stage, and more founders are raising large amounts of capital, and that's exciting for us because it proves the thesis is true, and it proves that downstream capital will invest in founders of color if they hit their metrics.
Well, I wouldn't bet against you, and the thesis is clearly on the right track. You've been already really generous with your time. I appreciate it, man. I know you're packed. I have one final question for you. I know that you just recently got married to your wife. Congratulations on the nuptials. And you announced on Twitter that for your honeymoon, you're moving down to Miami for a year together. I'm just curious how Miami is. I know there's a lot of buzz and energy down there. How are you finding it? It's lit. Okay.
Miami's lit. We've been down here for 3 weeks now. It reminds me a lot of New York, where like people are visiting all the time. It's like every week I have at least one friend who's in town, which is cool because you don't have to travel to see people. I have a lot of my friends who are here. One of my founders moved down here, so we took him out. I'm actually taking him to the Heat game on Saturday. And so it's just like a good time. It's a new ecosystem. You know, I'm going. I got a VC dinner tomorrow with a couple people who are down here. So I'm just trying to like learn the lay of the land, and I think it's exciting to like kind of be somewhere like when it's just booming. In Miami, I've been to Miami, you know, multiple times in my life. Like Miami is a 6 million person city. It's not as if like the Valley like discovered this like, you know, city that didn't exist. Like this city has existed. It's just more about now from a funding perspective, and from a founder perspective, like, are people going to actually stay? Are people going to build? But like Miami obviously already has millions of people, has the infrastructure, has industries here. And so I think part of the Twitter hype is like, people feel like they found this gym. Like this gym, it's not a gym. Like this is like a massive diamond that already existed. But it's cool to be around. Like, I think it's, you know, I'm happy my wife, you know, allowed us to do this and to like kind of just take this risk. It's probably the riskiest and most sporadic thing either one of us have done, but I'm glad we did it, and it's going to challenge us and push us. We both lived in New York for a decade. I love New York. I always will. And, you know, we might go back, we might not, we'll see in a year. But I think it's just like nice to get out of your comfort zone and to try new things. And before we have kids, like, just a great phase. And, you know, with COVID obviously accelerating how people think about their living situations, it was just like a really nice natural transition. And, you know, similar, didn't see it as a risk. Like, you know, maybe we'll miss out on New York in the summer. I definitely see my friends growing up. It's like, oh, dang, Brooklyn looks fun. But like, if it doesn't work out, we'll go back and we'll be fine. But I think it's a year of growth and a year of challenging us. And that's exciting for me. And COVID was a different kind of year. It was an internal year. Like, I was at home for 7 months with my family. This is more of like a year of like, let's just be out and like meet new people, versus being in New York, where I kind of know I know the people I need to know. I know where I need to go. So it's fun to like explore. It kind of reminds me of business school. Like, a lot of people in tech who moved here don't know the city. They all want to do dinners. They all want to go to games and go out. And it's like business school, like first semester, and everybody's just trying to figure out the lay of the land and who's who. And that's a cool feeling, you know, and that's a rare feeling that you get as an adult, because you don't usually have like those big inflection points. I think it's a unique moment of time for a lot of us as adults to have that like inflection point and that business school, college feeling. And so, yeah, I'm excited for it, and we'll see. But the first 3 weeks have been a lot of fun.
They say it's going to be the summer of love, so you get to spend it in Miami. Not a bad place to be. Henri, really appreciate it. Do you mind just telling us where, you know, founders, potential LPs can go to find you, be in touch with you, learn about what you're doing?
Yeah, harlem.capital /pitch. If you're a founder, we have a pitch form on there. And then all the information on us is either on the website at harlem.capital, or follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn at Harlem Capital, at Harlem Capital. And yeah, we post a lot. We have a newsletter that goes out the last Thursday of every month, which you can sign up on Substack or on our website. And so lots of ways to stay in touch with us, but we're pretty open and available. So yeah.
Big supporter of what you're doing. You guys are performing. Your story's incredible. Thanks for making the time for me. Appreciate it. It's our season finale. Henri.
Congrats.
Take care.